Folks, with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about more generally and widely about affirmative action hiring and race, gender quotas, that sort of thing, and just talk a little bit about the amount of it is now so rare that I come across a competent or well qualified person at any level and in any occupation that I almost marvel. Holy shit, this person actually knows what they're doing. They're actually capable and competent and qualified and experienced and knowledgeable. That is now so rare, again, that it's a shock when I do encounter it. And I can go for weeks these days and not encounter it. And of course, it's having a hugely damaging effect on the business and commercial and employment sector generally in Australia and across the Western world, where you get these race, gender type quotas and the affirmative action hiring and so on. So I'll just go into that a little bit. Before I do, I should point out that there hasn't been any stage, certainly that I'm aware of, or at least not in my lifetime, where everybody was well qualified and eager and keen and capable and motivated to do the right thing, that there was some sort of paradise or nirvana of high capability, and we're now sort of gone. It was never a perfect universe ever, but where merit played a particular decisive role or influential role, if you will, in education, the people that went to university, who got hired, and who get promoted and who got rewarded, then while merit was playing a particular prominent role in that selection, then there was many more qualified, capable people around then than there is today. So that's the difference. Merit has been extracted or subtracted, if you like, from the total equation. So now most of the people in university would never have got there in a merit-based system. Most of the people in the HR departments and the diversity departments, and in fact all across the board, they wouldn't have got there in a merit-based system. And the people that are getting promoted and rewarded, again, would have not got there in a merit-based system. Similarly, the sort of jobs that exist today would not exist in a merit-based system. So we're looking at there's an arts council, just an arts council. It's not even a business. It's an arts council relies on 90% on government handouts. There's an arts council, and there's a position in there for like a race hustler coordinator who's there to make sure that black people are adequately represented in the stage plays that this outfit does. And that job pays more than a senior civil engineer would, who's in charge of building a bridge or a fucking highway or something like that. In fact, there's a major a massive civil engineering project going on in Australia or in New South Wales, near Sydney at the moment. And the chief engineer in charge of such a huge responsibility, responsible for $1 billion, gazillion dollar budgets and thousands of workers and this sort of thing. So you're right at the very apex of that. And that job pays slightly more, just slightly more than the race diversity officer does for the Arts Council. That's the insanity. So remember that diversity officer job, A, wouldn't exist in a merit-based society, and B, even if it did exist, it would pay not even the average wage. That would be a minimum wage job. But instead, that's now paying, there are CEOs in small, medium companies that are being paid less than this fucking diversity officer for an arts council. That gives you, that'll just give you a measure of the insanity of the times that we live in. But I just want to sort of look at a few other examples. This is ones that I come across. Now, I noticed in the town, or the town nearest to where I live, there's 4 retail outlets that are part of a major national chain. And one thing I noticed was that the manager of each one of these retail stores, 2 of which are A-grade stores, and the other 2, I think, B or C grades, smaller in the overall scheme of things. Nonetheless, all of the store managers are women. Two of those women are brown. One is a woman who's an islander, like a Pacific Islander, who talks. I mean, you just try and imagine a feral animal creature, and you could conceive her and the way she talks and stands and walks. I mean, feral doesn't even begin to describe it. She's the fucking store manager. I mean, you're kidding me, right? Another one, the store manager, she's a woman on mid-40s. She's handicapped. She's got some sort of maybe lower back. She's huge, like seriously obese, corpulent. And she's got a lower back or a leg problem. So she hobbles around looking like an invalid. She's the store manager of another one. And then there's a youngish woman who's got multicolored hair and lots of body piercings and tattoos. She's the manager of another one, and so on. So that's the stage. Now, in each case, the assistant manager or deputy manager, whatever they call them in these places, are experienced men, vastly more experienced than the woman is. So we're looking at one woman who's been moved from checkout operator to store manager in just one move. And so none of these women are actually qualified and they haven't worked their way up. They haven't satisfied impartial, merit-based performance sort of targets. They've been elevated, hey, we want a black woman here, we want a lesbian woman there. The whole thing is affirmative action. But in each case, they've got to support the woman with an experienced straight white male who is the one, really doing the work, as far as I can tell. So this is an indication. None of these women would be in those roles without affirmative action. And none of these women would have been in those roles in a merit-based society or a merit-based workplace. But these are all national. Now, just having a look at these national chains, in each case, they work in a government-protected oligopoly, which is cosy to say the least. So the government-protected oligopoly, and none of them have to really compete in the marketplace. They make their money out of screwing suppliers and not having to offer competitive prices at the on the shelves with their products and the like. So this is they live in a protected market. They don't have to compete, and so they're able to indulge in diversity and equity inclusion fantasies. Now, it's no surprise that the biggest shareholders, like if you look at it collectively, the biggest shareholders are the big multinational investment firms, the BlackRocks and those sorts of guys who have quite serious ESG, diversity, equity, inclusion type pressures that they place on companies where they've got a decent shareholding. So these companies are almost obliged, I would say, to at least give lip service or perhaps a bit more to these diversity, equity, inclusion, affirmative action, hiring and promotion and so on. So that in the wider scheme of things, that needs to be taken into account. But these, particularly the Islander woman as the store manager, you would look at her and say, well, she'd be lucky to get a job sweeping the floor in the real world. But anyway, that's now just coming to. Here's another example of one where you would, in spite of affirmative action, where you would still expect top quality people to be in. This is sort of a type of a quango, I guess, but they're an advisory body. They purport to be sort of private and independent, but an advisory body to advise mid-level economies, so advise governments and the public service in mid-level economies, sort of Australian size and maybe a bit smaller, in that type of range. And say the 50th richest economy in the world to the 20th richest, so type of sort of in that range. And they're advisory. They're meant to be providing think tank, heavy intellectual lifting, the heavy lifting for policy development, that type of stuff. That's the space these guys occupy. Now, so I had a sort of an opportunity to. They needed a bit of help on a few things, so I had an opportunity to meet them. Now, I had a look at the sort of stuff they put out, the blurb, and it looks to me like the work of an undergraduate, and not a very well informed undergraduate. The sort of ideas and proposals they're putting forward were highly theoretical and obviously impractical. And again, it struck me as really undergraduates who'd never had a job, never worked, and didn't really understand the world, but they understood the theory and well, I'm sure they even understood that, but they're aware of the various theories around certain subjects. So they're expounding theories and putting in nice little charts and graphs and things like that. And I suppose it was reasonably well laid out and well presented, but you looked and thought, this is really lightweight. This is really lightweight. But they've been attracting a lot of money. They've managed to register themselves as a charity, so they've become, I think, like a money laundering house, as far as I can tell. But what they're offering is low grade, low quality, but they seem to be getting plenty of orders. I don't know how they're doing it, but I wouldn't say they're sort of sympathetic to the globalist situation. I wouldn't say they're against it. They're certainly they'd probably be more right wing, I guess, than some of the others, but they'd be, I would think, centre left type positioning would be my view. But anyway, I got to meet or most of them, not all of them, got to meet, and I was. These are meant to be. They're presented as being hardcore geniuses, and these are the people who know how it works, and yet none of them were impressive, or even slightly. There was majority women, and the only straight guy was brown, and the only white guy was gay, and then there was the women. One of the women may have been gay, a lesbian, but I think most of the women were straight. But they weren't heavyweights at all. They were lightweight, little butterfly type flunkies, and quite sort of simple, girly, and yet they were. I mean, they're not paid a massive amount of money, but they're retained when they're needed, and they're free to go out and get other income elsewhere. So just for just being able to turn up when they're sort of needed, and they've got a few days' notice to sort of get out of whatever they're doing and come across. They're being paid something like 3 times the average wage just to be on like a standby situation. And given they can then earn other income and do other gigs and that sort of stuff, that's actually pretty good. And if you look at the image, like over the last 12 months, they were churning out one not very long paper, like a white paper type thing, not very long, maybe every 6 weeks. So they were maybe doing 10 to 12 weeks of work, and they've got flunkies to do research for them. And for that, they were paid, again, 3 times the average wage. This is a pretty good gig for say 3 months work. And again, they're made. So I was quite surprised, but all of them were, in my view, were affirmative action hires. Had it been up to me to hire these people, I wouldn't have hired any of them. Unless I wanted to look at a bunch of passive flunkies that weren't really going to think outside the square and really going to regurgitate bullshit out of their college textbook or something like that. So but they just weren't any good. I'm going, wow, these people are being paid serious bucks, as in the business is attracting serious dollars, being paid by governments around the world to do the heavy lifting, and all you're churning out is undergraduate bullshit. So again, none of them had worked in the private sector. It was my estimation was correct. None of them had even worked in a private sector a day in their lives. They'd all been public service sort of flunkies and stooges and just fluttering around. They're well connected into the right place, so they're being gifted all sorts of gigs to research this or do that, and the reality is they've got no special talents, abilities, or brain power they bring to the table. They're all affirmative action people. Now, you get this too, sort of in the private sector generally, in the meetings that I have, that I go to. There's hardly any people that are qualified to do what they're doing, and this makes life harder for me, for our business, for them, for everybody concerned. Life is much harder than it needs to be, because these people have been hired for affirmative action reasons. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. So, I mean, there's a case in point. We've got a recent one where a special consultant's been hired to front this company that wants to do some pretty intense technical stuff. Now, they've hired a brown woman who's got no expertise at all in this area, or even anything remotely associated with it, and they've hired her for big bucks, by the way. They've hired her to consult for them, to be like their front end into the world, and she's meant to put together the various contractors, subcontractors, to do this project. And now the company doesn't know what they're doing, because the person in charge at their end, like the project director, is also completely unqualified, and again is affirmative action hire, who's hired another affirmative action hire. We have to have a brown woman, and who doesn't know what they're doing. So we're finding we're in a position of having to handhold these people very slowly through and talk about the most basic things. How many cents are in a dollar? Let's, and you've got to get down to childlike, almost primary school, kindergarten level basics, to try and explain to them how things work. Now, not only do they not know, but they're also very insecure and touchy about not knowing. So they think that they can hide their lack of knowledge from you by acting tough and just raising their voice, things like that. So you have to be very patient, extremely patient with them. And they tell the most terrible lies in order to try and reinforce their position of superiority. Best form of defense is attack, and that type of stuff. And so they're painful and difficult to deal with. And why any organization would force themselves or put themselves in a position to suffer this is, of course, Now, I'll talk a little bit too about the parallel economy that exists all over the West now, because of the importation of cheap peasant labour. There's now vast numbers of illiterate peasants in the West living, 20, 25 people to a 2-bedroom apartment, and they're working at the floor sweeping, the house cleaning, the pool cleaning, the dishwashing, and and so on and so forth. But the size of the economy in all across the West, but Australia as well, the size of the economy that is unable to compete in a competitive marketplace, that portion of the economy. Now, whether it's protected through monopoly or oligopoly, or whether it's artificially cheap cost of running the business, makes no difference. It can't compete. These businesses cannot compete. So they're bringing over, and the West is addicted now to cheap, illiterate, cheap peasant labour. As these workers come in, or these people come in, they're getting government benefits, but they're working under the table for shit money. But they're getting the money, the salary or their income through labour hire firms, and this sort of thing is packaged up with accommodation and food and transport to and from getting to work. And you see this with sort of the Chinese and others, where a little sort of minibus will pull up outside of a could be a restaurant, or could be a house to do cleaning, or could be whatever, and the door will open, and then the foreman person will scream, and they'll all come, the sliding door will come, and then they'll all run out and in peasant type walking manner, they'll go and do the cleaning or the dishwashing, whatever it is. So the amount of businesses that where they just can't compete in the market. They've got non-viable, in a commercial competitive sense, they've got non-viable business. Doesn't matter whether it's a takeout food franchise or a corner store or whatever it is, it doesn't matter, cleaning business and so on. They've got these peasant workers from the third world. Now, these workers aren't paying tax. They're claiming benefits they're not entitled to. Whatever money they do make, that's being sent back to relatives in India or Pakistan or wherever the fuck it is, Africa or something. There's money's being sent back there, and their handlers in the labour hire type firms, they're taking a piece of that action. We'll send it back, it'll cost you 10% of what it is, that sort of thing. So they're collecting, if you like, a tax. The money coming in to buy these businesses and so on is coming from offshore, where they levy management fees so that there's no local taxation paid by the business, let alone the workers. But if this business had to pay, the award wage, and if the workers had to live according to local Australian law, no more than 4 people to the apartment, this sort of thing, instead of 25 or 30 people to the apartment, they had to live according to the law, and that sort of thing. That they couldn't do that. They couldn't structure the scam pay structures that they just couldn't do that, and the people wouldn't have enough money to send back. A lot of these peasant workers are brought over and live in what we would find unacceptable conditions. They're doing that just simply so they can send money back to their families in the rural village in fucking India or somewhere. So this is where they're not here to become part of the local economy, or to they're not even spending their money here in Australia. So the West, it could be the West, any Western country. So the Western country doesn't have any benefit at all. And this is part of the idea of employing these people here and creating a non-competitive or a business sector that cannot survive without all this artifice around it. Only the artifice allows it to survive, and even then on life support. And this is something that we need to really come to grips with in the West, and accept that it's very damaging to the Western economy. I'll end with this. There's something that I come across all the time now, where a competent white. So you can fire a white guy for anything now. It's certainly in Australia. Straight white males get fired for anything. You want to fire the black lesbian, you've got a problem. But having a look at another white guy was gone, and I was asking about it, because I would always try and, you have to be a little bit careful because you don't think that you're gathering information. But so here's this white guy who, no problem. He's working hard, doing a good job, arriving on time. He wasn't drunk, didn't grab any female employee's ass, anything like that. He was a model employee. But what was his crime? What was his crime, you ask, for getting fired? Because he was doing such a good job, because he's so capable and well qualified, he was lowering the self-worth of his affirmative action colleagues. So that was it, because they were hired unqualified to do the job, affirmative action and quotas, because he could do the job and do it well. He was industrious and conscientious and motivated and focused. Just because of that, he was lowering the self-worth of all these unqualified race gender quota hires, and for that reason he had to go. Fuck. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.